Hello and welcome to another episode of the No Nay Never podcast. It is another week. It's another defeat for the Clarets in this really quite miserable Premier League season. We were hoping that the Great Escape was on. We were hoping that we were going to get some good news about points deductions, and we were hoping that by now would be at least 1 or 2 points before safety. We are not. We are cut adrift now in the bottom three with Sheffield United, and it looks like a return to the Championship for Vincent Kompany's Clarets. Joining me this week on the analysis show to look back at that game at Goodison Park, fresh from his paternity leave, he is back in work. We've dragged him back. It is the one and only Rich Steele. We're going to talk about all the talking points from the game and what the rest of this season and the summer holds for our Clarets. So, buckle up. Let's go. Rich, I'm not going to lie. I'm not entirely sure that having a child is justification for not being on the podcast for 3 weeks. How are you, sir? Welcome
Yeah,
back.
yeah, thank you very much. Just want to say, I just want to say as well for our listeners, it's a pleasure to be part of this No Nay Never team. I was very kindly spoiled with some lovely presents from the No Nay Never
Oh,
team, which I'm very appreciative of. And even though this season's not been a great season, being being a Burnley Football Club supporter for me and being part of this podcast, it's not just about what the team does for 90 minutes. It's about being part of a group, part of a community that you can always rely on and have great friendships from. And supporting
yeah,
Burnley for me
definitely.
has given me some amazing friendships. And I think that's what we all love about Burnley. Even though we
Community.
are coming into the modern era, and we'll talk about that. I think a bit in this podcast. There's still that real family and community feel to supporting Burnley. So I just want to say a massive thank you for that.
No, you're
I
welcome.
appreciate it.
Everyone's favourite Wiganer. You're our adopted son, and you always will be now. You're
Yeah,
never
no.
getting away from
Again,
us now. We've got
do you
you.
know what? The amount of times, just maybe with work or different people you meet, they kind of confuse. Some of them think I'm from Burnley and support Wigan, and some people think I'm like from Burnley, but live it all. It's just so I have to no. I'm from Wigan, but I support Burnley. I don't live in Burnley. But why do you
Oh,
support
bless you.
Burnley then? Well, do you really want me to tell you this boring story?
It's like, never mind. We've all been
There
there.
we go.
We've got you now. That's the main thing. And unfortunately, that
Yeah.
means for you that you end up making treks like you did at the weekend across the counties to Goodison Park for that defeat. It was all going very, very well until about 2 minutes into stoppage time, the end of that half. I guess let's just rip the plaster off and go straight there when we talk about that disappointing goal, because it was only a 1-0 defeat in the end. I don't think the second half performance was particularly impressive. It wasn't as good as the first half performance. But we were in the game, and it took, again, which has been just the blueprint of so many times this season, a really stupid error to cost us 3 points again.
It's just how many times can you keep getting kicked in the balls?
Mm.
That's what it felt like, and the amount of times this season that type of thing has
38
happened.
probably this season, Rich.
But the amount of individual mistakes and you know the Wolves game that happened where we conceded on half time when
Yeah.
I felt comfortable in the game on Saturday, and we've been singing Murich's praises. He's done fantastically well since he's come back into the team, and you see that goal go in, and it's just that sinking feeling again, and you could feel the energy drain out of the team when that happened,
Yeah.
and the belief drain out of the team, and then second half. We'll discuss that, but there's just a complete lack of belief in the second half, and that I think has come from numerous times of being kicked in the balls. I think a little bit and not being able to come back from it. And there's been so many individual errors this season, so many team errors when you can look at shape, tactics, and ultimately, I've spoke obviously for podcast listeners who know I work for a company that's based out of Liverpool. Got a lot of close friends who are Everton fans, and a lot of them said to me, Burnley were the better side, which I didn't agree with. But Burnley played the better football. We knocked it about quite well, which we do. But in both boxes, we're terrible.
So,
We're
yeah, that's
terrible
the problem, isn't it?
defensively. We don't have any cutting edge, and ultimately that's why we're going down without a whimper. You look how poor this Everton side have been this
Mm.
season and how poor they were on Saturday. Listen, that was a advert for Premier League football. My word, the quality of it. Both teams were giving the ball away left, right, and centre. And if it wasn't for this points deductions for Everton, I think I've done my maths right. It would be 16 points behind them,
That's
which
shocking.
is
Considering how bad
that's
they
a
are, that's terrible.
that's a real damning indictment of how bad we've been this season. And I think we'd be something like 4 to 6. I think we'd be 10 points behind Forest. We're 6 points behind the Luton team, who we comfortably
Yeah.
come way above. I can't remember, maybe 20 points ahead of last season. And, it's just been so disappointing. And it's kind of like, when you're in, first 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, Everton were on, I won't say on top massively, but they were slightly the better team, which you expect. I always kind of say, away from home in a big game, keep it tight for the first 15, 20 minutes. And then after that, we didn't create loads of chances, but we were quite comfortable in the game. We're knocking it about well. Everton had zero threat. We was even defending set pieces quite comfortably. And then, like, Muric had all the time in the world. It's like he's had too much time. And then you just think there's like 30 seconds left of the half. Just pump it upfield. Like, even
Yeah.
if you find that pass into midfield, you're probably not even going to have time to, get a shot on goal anyway or create an attack. And it's just like, go in 0-0 at half time, have a little debrief at half time. Probably know Everton are going to try and come out again the first 5 minutes, and then get back to playing your way. And we've in that moment, when you look at the Everton points deduction today, we just really, that moment there, threw away our chance of staying up. But that one moment encapsulated a whole season in that one moment too. It was just I, I just felt so flat. And my dad was like, "What's he done that? What's he done that for?" And I was watching it, and I couldn't even like
Yeah.
begin
You just
to
can't
like
get angry about
analyze it,
it.
because it's like, yeah, I wasn't even like angry about that particular moment, because I'm just like, Jesus Christ, it's happened again. There was almost a sense of inevitability about the moment.
Yeah. There's been, like you said before, there's just been chapter after chapter of errors and just self-destructive behavior this entire
That's it,
season
yeah.
from all of them. And I think it to me as well, if we move on to the second major point of the game as well, another red card, another sending off for a stupid reason. And it's like, how many times do you want, like, where's your pride in this performance team? Like, why aren't we trying here? And seven red cards. I think I read somewhere today that that's the most that any Premier League side has conceded since 2014, 2015. That was Newcastle back then. It was both 7. And I think Chris Bowden tweeted on Saturday that we went something like 237 Premier League games without
Yeah.
conceding 7 red cards in all that time. And it's just, for me, this side lacks discipline. It
I
lacks
think it lacks
professionalism.
accountability as well
Yes, it
from the
does.
coaching staff, to actually like, or maybe from senior players in that dressing room to say, no, what are you doing there? Why,
Yeah.
there's been, and I think that lack of accountability on the players, there's a lack of accountability on the manager
Yes.
from the board. So like, I don't think at any point this season has anyone go, listen, lads, what are we doing here? Let's
Yeah.
just take a
Nobody
rain check and
has.
go, what are we doing? Let's just take stock and reflect on what we've done. And people, I've kind of maybe said, O'Shea, it might have been harsh to give him a red, maybe it was 50-50 decision, but it's a terrible touch,
Yeah, don't put
a
yourself in that
terrible
position in the
tackle.
first place.
And and O'Shea, I'm not. I've said my piece on O'Shea in this podcast this year, but I think O'Shea is just like a number of players they will have some good games at this level, but they're not consistently good enough for the Premier League game in
No.
game out. Don't get me wrong, like, I know the two really top quality players, and I think Branthwaite's gonna go on to have a really good career. But look at the difference in Everton's centre halves compared to
Yeah.
our centre halves on Saturday, and I think that's our defence is nowhere near good enough
Well, look at the
to let.
defence that went down under Daesh. We've got Pope, Tarky, Ben Meir that is the Holy Trinity
Yeah,
in the middle. That was a like we look back then and wonder whether they were good enough to survive. I would give anything for those 3 back now.
I'm not. Listen, we can. I don't know how on that, but like that season, I think it was on single figures the amount of times that those 3 played together because of injuries. I think Tataki on me. I think me was injured a lot of that season. Collins come in.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
Kevin
true.
Long played the last few
Well,
games
Ben
of the
Mee had
season.
quite a long injury, didn't he? Because Tarky was
Yeah,
captain for a while.
well,
Yeah,
Ben Mee was practically manager, wasn't he, for the last 10
yeah,
games?
that's true actually.
So, and that, and you look at our defense, and it's just been way off. And when you've got a poor defense and you're asking them to play an open style of football, it's been a recipe for disasters. We can go back to the Wolves free kick. Listen, it was a poor decision by the referee, but I looked at the decision that O'Shea made. So I don't know if people's picked this up, but in the build up to the free kick being awarded, O'Shea's gone tracking someone to the halfway line, and then he's not won the ball, so he's ended up chasing him back, leaving
Didn't
a
get
massive
anywhere
gap.
near him. Yeah,
Listen, it wasn't a foul, but we're kind of our architects of our own
yeah,
downfalls. We don't still like. Why are you? If you're a centre half, why are you pressing somebody to the
yeah.
halfway line in the 48th minute? You're asking for trouble because if you don't win that ball, you're leaving a massive gap, and you can't make those decisions at this level. And you
It's that
know,
high press that you keep talking about this season as well. It's like we've insisted on playing it all season, and we've not got the personnel to
yeah.
perform it.
And I think I've mentioned to you before, and I mentioned it on the WhatsApp group this morning. It's kind of like in modern football now, it's kind of like a manager has to have one set style of play, and
Yeah,
they stick to that set style. I don't know if you can hear the baby,
I can.
and they stick to that
Do we
set
need to talk
style. Kind of,
quietly? Don't wake her up.
yeah, and no, it's fine. And they stick to that set style game after game after game. They
Yeah,
don't mix it up. So
which
like when we
company's done
play,
this season.
yeah, of course, and a lot of managers do, and a lot of managers pay. It's like they choose philosophy over results, which I can't get my head around. And managers, I think, manage for the CV now rather than results. And so you look at us this season. We got a draw away at Brighton, done okay at Wolves, beat Brentford, done okay against Fulham. The teams who are less physical, but when we come up against a team like Everton, who are very physical and who will play in a low block,
Yeah,
it's actually we've got no chance of winning that game because we're not willing to change it up, and we've not got the personnel to change it up either. So I think there's tactically, individually, we've just been miles off this
yeah,
season. And I think the one thing I knew we'd struggle defensively at times at this level, but I thought we'd have a few more games where we might outscore the opposition a bit like Bournemouth did under Eddie Howe when they'd win
yeah.
games 4-3 or 3-2, and it'd be quite exciting. But we've not even had that. It's been
It's been
and
poor. Not good
it's
enough ultimately.
no, and do you know the one thing that got to me? It wasn't the mistake from Rich, and I put this out on Twitter, and a lot of people liked it, so they've obviously agreed with it. Was we was like 5 minutes to go, and it was Esteve to Burge to
Oh,
Muric to
just side
Esteve
to
to
side
Cullen
passing.
back to the defense, and you're like, we are losing. And then we had like a free kick. You're like, just get the ball into the box, get your centre halves
Give
or
yourself a
Burge.
chance.
But like, and then it's like we're just still passing it about, and then the subs he makes, he puts like Gunmanson left back, and like Everton are playing in a low block, and you've got one player on the bench who can actually beat a person in Benson, sat on the bench, and you bring in Gunmanson on, and you're like, what is going on? And then put Burge to centre half, and Burge is the one player who can actually break the line through midfield. I'd have rather like brought Ekdal on and just
Yeah.
kept Burge in midfield. It's
Yeah,
like
he's
I
made some
don't know.
baffling
It
substitutions all
it just
season.
it just doesn't make sense. And then you've got Vitinho, like him or lump him. He's actually been playing quite well on the wing.
Yep.
And then obviously he had to move to fullback because Asenio was suspended, but then he's out the team. And then you've got Foster, who's a
Oh,
striker, playing
what
central, and
is
you've got
that?
Odegaard, who's a winger, playing
Playing
central.
central. That
And
was the
you're like,
one for me. I was like, what
what
are
is
you
going on?
doing?
What is going? And you're like, talk about square pegs in round holes, and he's done it so often this season. Odegaard, the only thing I can think of is he gone, right, Odegaard is poor defensively. He doesn't track runners. So is he gone, well, at least Foster can maybe be a bit more useful defending, especially because Assignon's quite weak defensively. But then you're like, in the second half when you need a goal, um, put Odegaard on the wing. You've got Seamus Coleman, who must be 87 at fullback and can't run. and you've got like
87.
and you've got Brun Larson playing against him, who's got no pace. You
Yeah.
like put Odeberg, get the ball to Odeberg, run at
Yeah,
Coleman,
it's just
and get Foster up front. And it's like Fofana the last two. Don't get me wrong, Fofana scored a few goals, but technically he's horrendous. He's technically
yeah,
awful.
he is
Ball
poor.
bounces off him. He dribbles past one play,
His
dribbles
first
too
touch,
long.
he's got a foot like a
Oh,
brick. It's just
like a
oh,
trampoline, and yeah. He's got and then it's like you keep him on like against Wolves all game, and you just so there's things there where you just like, and people are going like, oh, you're buying into this project company and the process, but I
I don't
don't
see it
trust
this
this.
year at all. I don't trust it
I
at
don't
all.
trust this project anymore because it's just same thing game after game, same mistakes of playing people out of position, same defensive mistakes. And it's like we played this structure of a flat back 4-2-3-1 kind of all season, really, with a few little tweaks. Not really worked. And he's not tried to change formation at all. Go five at the
No.
back even. He's tried that in a couple of games where we've tried to hold on to a lead and it's not worked. But largely when we're actually chasing a game and we're 1-0 down, he just does like for like subs. He never goes, right, we'll go for two up front. I know that's
No,
maybe a bit archaic,
it's
but
not
there's just
proactive, a change.
no, and then there's like when we're actually doing well in a game, like West Ham away, he'll change to go five at the back and then we have no out ball. So it's to
There's a
me, it's I
naivety
hope he
about
goes.
his company, about his tactics at this level, and I think that's where I've got with this one, Rich, is that he's going to do well again next season because he does very well at that in that level of league. The Belgian league is similar to the
Yeah,
Championship. He
plus
does
there's
very
shite in
well,
that
and
league, isn't
yeah,
there?
he'll do very well. And his tactics
Plymouth,
are more
Blackburn.
advanced. Yeah, they're more advanced
Yeah.
than what they are in the Premier League. But what already worries me is if we're buying into this project and this plan for Vincent Kompany to deliver sustainable long term top flight football. I don't, unless he can really learn his lessons for this season, he can put that ego to one side. I don't. I'm already not looking forward to coming back up under him again.
No, no, but like I'd almost be like, do you know what? If he gets us up, sack him. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? But
I
like,
don't. I wouldn't. I don't
I don't
disagree.
think that. But and it's like, where is he gonna learn? Is he gonna? Because what we
He
have
hasn't
not
this
done is
year.
that we've not done the basics.
No,
There's all this fancy stuff and stuff like we've not done the basics, like set pieces. We do this zonal marking and it doesn't work. You
no.
end up with like players like Amdouni, Vitinho marking centre halves at set pieces. It's like the set piece we conceded against Wolves. Like nobody was near that. Eight Nuri, who's like one of the smallest players on the pitch, and he's got a free header.
Yeah.
And it's just like the basics like that. Looking forward, obviously, to company managers in the championship. So like when company come in, it felt like a real change for the club, right? Dyche has gone. This is a new Burnley, this is a new project. It was fresh, it was exciting. Company had an energy about him. This season, he looks rattled to me. You
Yeah, he
seen him at
does,
Chelsea. Don't
and
get
he
me
looks
wrong,
stubborn and a bit
he looks,
obnoxious, doesn't he?
yeah. And I'm looking at it going, players like Benson and Zaruri and Teller and Matson. I'm going to come on to another point
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
give
Go, go, go.
some praise in a minute.
Oh,
Kind of
good.
bought in, well, not praise, but to look at it from another point of
Yeah,
view,
yeah,
bought
yeah.
into this project. But if you're like a player coming to the Championship now, wanting to get Burnley into the Premier League, you'll probably be looking at players like Benson and Zaruri going, well, what's the point in going there? Because if we
Yeah,
go up, I'm just going to be shipped out on loan. And I think there's obviously been a lot of toxicity within that dressing room this season. I can't imagine there's not been.
no, I
Because,
agree.
I played in football teams and you have mates in that
Yeah,
football team. And look how close that team was. You can't imagine that there's been players from last season who's been happy with the way like Roberts, Zaruri and Benson in particular have been treated. And I'm like, as he's not going into this new championship season fresh now. He's
no,
going
it's
into it
not.
with baggage. He's going into it with
He's got a
wounds.
lot of work to do. Even
We've
the
all
way that he
been,
treated Muric, Rich, at the beginning,
yeah, it was
was
poor.
awful. It was
Yeah, like
awful.
and he has his like favourites. It's like kind of like Ekdal has one bad game and he's straight out then.
Yeah,
But then like O'Shea can make mistake after mistake and he still gets picked. It's like and these so this is where I'm a little bit like just confused with the way he's done things and like you know yourself, Natalie, when you've been in a job and you've had a failure, which we've all been, or you've failed on a
yeah,
project, which we've all done, it's very difficult to come back from that. It's very, very difficult.
Takes a while.
And
You feel
that's where I am.
second guess yourself all the time, and you feel you're scared of
Yes.
making it, and you lose a little bit of that edge and that confidence, and that's definitely what this side have got. There's a part of me. I spent a lot of this season questioning this 5-year plan, because to me, if they were saying we got promoted 2 years ahead of schedule, you had to trust the process, buy into the project, blah blah blah. And I think I challenged this a few months ago and said, well, are we going to lose the entire squad again and bring another 17 players in? Because if that's the case, I'm not sure that story stacks up about the 5-year plan, because you're in a perpetual cycle of new squad learning to play together, all new. But actually, at the end of this season, I've probably gone a little bit full circle with that and wonder, actually, do we actually need to start the 5-year plan again? Do we actually need to just rip it up this season and just go, you know what, we've bought poorly, some of those players are terrible, and let's start. We're going to lose. The one player I would want to keep is Sander Berge. There's no way we're going to keep him. Foster, I would love to keep. We're not going to keep him. I still
I don't know
believe in
about
Amdouna.
Foster.
I
I think
think
we
somebody
could
will come
keep
in for it.
Foster.
Yeah, I think somebody will come in for him. I think he
Okay.
absolutely will.
I with Foster, whether this is right or wrong, I think his mental health issues will put people off.
Yeah, yeah,
So we'll see.
yeah. We'll see how that goes. You'd need a good, strong club that have
Yeah.
got the same values that we have in protecting the players and looking after them. I still believe in Amdouni. I know he's had a poor season. I think a lot of that is down to the players around him and not playing to his strengths. I think there is a player there. I would love to keep him because I think he will absolutely tear up the Championship next season. But then we've got like Taylor, Court, Brownhill. They're getting too old now. I don't think they're going to. So in some respects, I'm no longer scared of a wholesale change again in the summer, because I think it might be what we need. And Kompany needs to regain the respect of his fans, and he needs to regain the respect of those players that stay. And I think the thing that's missing for me, Rich, is there's some fundamental values that are missing from this club, from the manager down, and that is pride, professionalism, and hard work and graft, and they are
Yeah.
just not there. And no, and you hit the nail on the head when you said before, it's a matter of accountability. If the manager's not demanding this kind of excellence from them, then they can just coast all season. And one of the worst things that we could have done this season was tell this manager that he had a job for life and that he was under no, because there's been no potential for jeopardy for Vincent Kompany this season. So where's the incentive for him to work harder? There isn't.
To me, I'm gonna. I think you covered a lot of really good points there, so I'm gonna try and go from like beginning till the end and put my points on. The 5-year plan, there's one word for that for me, it's propaganda. So people
Yeah,
buy
I
into
suspect
it.
you're right.
And like you said, the 5-year plans were back to day one of it essentially, because
Yeah,
we're gonna have to start again, and you're not gonna always do that well on recruitment, as we've proved this summer. You're not always gonna. And the second one is players going. So you kind of like, I can't remember who it was, but a journalist said, like, even though we signed a lot of new players, we still had the core of the Dice, a lot of the core of the Dice team, which brought the values for Burnley. Court, Jay, Taylor, Brownhill,
we had Barnes
Gudmundsson,
last season.
Barnes. So you still had a good amount of players there, but you lose all them. Where's
There's
that
nobody that's
burn?
got that. Yeah,
So
there's
that
nobody that's
worries
got
me.
it.
I think Brownhill might stay because he's not too old,
Yeah,
Brownhill. But the rest will probably go. So I thought it was a really interesting point made that I'd not thought about. It was kind of like, yeah, you had the best of Kompany, but you also had the best of Dyche blended in one. So it's
yeah,
kind of like
you
all this
did.
flair was still subsidized by the old. And what was your last point? I can't remember.
The values, the fundamental values that we're
Yeah,
missing.
well, it's kind of
You've already said
similar to
that.
what
Yeah, I
I
was
was
picking up.
saying. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like, and then you've got three players in particular for me who are very good championship players. You've got Robert, Zaruri, and Benson, who two have gone on loan, one's been frozen out. They're going to come back into the fold, but they're not going to give their all.
no.
So what do you do with them three? They're either going to be probably a bit toxic in the dressing room, you're going to have to sell them. So that leaves more positions. Then you've got others like Twine and Obafemi, who's kind of like been fobbed off. And you kind of like, I think it. So I think it leaves us in a
Twine's an
way worse.
interesting one, actually, Rich. I would bring Twine back
Yeah,
for the
I would play
championship,
Twine, yeah,
and I
but
think
it
Twine
kind
will
of.
be okay.
But I think it's left us in a position where there's going to be a lot of unhappy people coming back that first day of pre-season, where like you kind of felt Kompany's first day of pre-season, it was a clean slate. He had that big meeting, it was a clean slate. Everybody went in fresh, and When now it feels like there's going to be a lot of unhappy people going back into that dressing room. And what frustrates me about this season, I think companies treated this like Football Manager, like a bit of a
He has.
plaything,
It's been allowed
rather than
to, though.
actually serious. And for two clubs to get deducted 4
6.
and 8 points, whatever it is,
Yeah.
I think it is, and to be
Yeah.
way behind them and to not
Shocking.
even have a chance of staying up, it's shocking. I've seen people on Twitter trying to defend this season. There's no defending this season.
No, there isn't. And
It has
actually,
been
I don't think you can defend the season with any level of credibility.
the
Um,
Premier League is getting tough. As one last point for me, the
yeah,
Premier
yeah,
League
yeah,
is getting tougher. I think when we come seventh, 7, 8 years ago, it's harder to do that now
yeah.
because you look at top class internationals are playing for bottom half teams in the Premier League now. Um, but at the same time, for us to come way short has been disappointing. And the last point I'll make is that second half against Everton, and I don't want to come across a bit Brexit, but where is that real passion and that real will to win that game? To
Yeah,
really go, do you know what? We need to win. This is our
yeah.
last chance of staying up.
We've
Who's
not seen
really
it all
grabbing?
season.
Who's grabbing the game by the scruff of the
No
neck? And
leader, no leader, no
there is no
captain.
leader. And I'm someone who's competitive. I'll do everything without, and I don't cheat, but I'll do everything in my power to win. And I've not seen that enough this season from a group of players. I've
No.
not seen enough where players are like on the haunches at the end of the game, gutted. We've done everything there.
Yeah. They
We could, we
should.
could, we
They
could still
should
be
come and
playing
play
now
me.
against Everton, and we won't
Would
score.
score, no. I
That
should go into
second
that
half was
dressing room,
awful.
Rich, and sorry, I'm getting some feedback. I was gonna say I should go into that dressing room and they should play me at Monopoly. Then they'd understand what it takes like the will to live.
Yeah.
Definitely would. Sorry, do you want to, I was getting a bit of feedback there on our recording. Do you want to just finish that last point off?
No, I think that's just it. Really, I just think there's been, as well as being poor tactically, individually, and individual mistakes, poor tactic. I think there's just been a real lack of will to win. Like look at how many goals we've conceded late on, where you've really got to battle and do everything you can to hold on.
Yeah.
I think there was 2 games where Brentford and Chelsea, we had it, and you think, okay, maybe we're turning a bit of a corner. And then Saturday, we just went back to our old ways, and it's kind of a case of leopards don't change the spots a
No, they
little bit,
don't.
you
No, I
know.
agree. We've got about 5 minutes left before we wrap up this week's episode. I just want to leave you with something, just because I know this is one for another podcast, and we're going to try and get some commentary out of the club on this, and then we're going to come back and do a special on it. Because I know this is something that Rich is particularly passionate about. The audited accounts have been published this week, which have put some concerning comments in there about basically the fact that the club is very much being run on a succession business. We are going to be going back to the Championship next season, and there is a question mark around the long-term sustainability of the current business model. Rich, I know you wanted just to air a few thoughts on this before we get some comments. We're going to put it through to the fan advisory board in the next meeting. We're going to try and get some comments. We'll do a bigger pod on this so we can talk about it. But I know this is something you just wanted to raise now, Rich.
Yeah, I think with me for football, I really love the playing side of it, the tactics of it and whatnot. So this is not really within my remit. I don't know a lot about it. But for me, there's too many red flags that have been brought up for it not to be a concern. I think it's kind of like, I think the analogy I used was it's kind of like getting into a relationship and there's red flags all around you, but you kind of choose to ignore them because you don't really want to acknowledge it. And that's kind of where I am with it. And just obviously, Natalie, you have a bit of a different view on the kind of me and some of the other podcast members is this model seems to be based on success. And if we're successful, we'll be okay. But my worry is if we don't get promoted next season and once those parachute payments kind of like go off and we've got this debt, ALK don't have any money themselves. Alan Pace is a rich man compared to maybe me and you, but he's not a wealthy man in football terms. I'm kind of like, who's going to pay for the club? That's where my worry
Or
comes in.
how are
And
we going to raise
obviously,
the funds to keep it going?
yeah, like how are we going to raise the funds to pick, we're a small club with a small revenue. I appreciate what they're trying to do with the hospitality and the off the pitch stuff and raise sponsors, and obviously raise investment through JJ Watt, and people like that. But I'm just kind of like, when say if it does go a little bit sour, like is Alan Pace really going to be there to front it all up? I don't know. I think we're putting a lot of trust in someone and in a board who we don't fully know why they bought Burnley. Well, we know because they want to make money. He's obviously said about his dad was a missionary in East Lancashire, and he's got this connection to the club. Which, listen, you can you can believe that or you don't have to believe it. But it's kind of my thing is like, I just worry when all this Premier League money goes and parachute payment, TV money goes, and all of a sudden you've sold a few players, and then you sell your best players to pay off these debts, and then once that money goes, where's the money going to come from to
Yeah,
finance the club?
where do we get the investment from it? Yeah, I
And I think
think
that's a fair question.
I,
So,
I do, I do, and it's a question that we're going to put to the fan advisory board for you and ask those questions to know that there are other fans who don't understand it. I think they are legitimate concerns, and I think that they want. Listen, we're not going to get an in-depth answer on this because a lot of the financial runnings of the club are confidential, and they don't get released to fans or to the media for very reason. There's not many clubs that do that, but yes, you are right. There is a question mark, and I think if we make the same analogy as to Burnley off the pitch as on the pitch, we needed to dig deep and fight this season when our backs were against the wall, and we haven't done. We've just rolled over.
mm,
So is that running through the entire club? Like, do the board have the grit and determination to pull us through this when the times are tough that they haven't done on the pitch? So we don't have answers now. We are told that the club is being run very, very well. We're being told that we're in much healthier position going down this time than we were the last time we went down, that the club considers itself a Premier League club. And yes, whilst we might need to drop into the Championship every now and again to rebuild, it should be in a position to bounce up and down again. There's question marks around the Super League. Is that going to happen? Do we know there's all sorts of things coming out in the press again now about I think it's very clear that the current model of the Premier League is not sustainable. So
mm,
we just need some reassurance from this relative group of strangers who have taken over our club that we can trust them, that this model is legit. So that one is to be continued. And we will report back. We're going to have to wrap up there. We're running out of time for this week's episode. So we're going to leave those things with you. We're going to get question marks answered for you on season ticket uplift and on the financial model and the audited accounts. The next meeting is on the 18th of April. So George, Charlotte and I will report back after that meeting and see where we get to. Rich, you've got about a minute left. Any parting comments for us before we go?
yeah, it's just, listen, we'll always, this. I think we do this podcast, and there'll always be a fantastic group of supporters to back this football club. I'll be there through thick and thin, but at the same time, I think there needs to be a lot of. I think the fans, I think the fans this season have been fantastic. A lot of other clubs would have been booing left, right, and centre, and I don't blame people. And like I said, I want people to be. All I want this end of this season is for I don't know how it's done. Is for Kompany to be properly held accountable. He doesn't get held accountable in the media. He dodges questions. He gives bullshit answers. We played okay today. So I just want to see a bit of accountability held by the club. And the same with Pace, really. What worries me about Pace is when it's great, he's here left, right, and centre, isn't he? But when it's not going so good, he withdraws a little bit. So I think that's just what I want. And hopefully we can have a really prosperous future at the football club. But yeah, there's going to be big challenges ahead.
They will, but we will be there to see them. That's all we've got time for, listeners. My thanks as ever go to everybody who has contributed to the making of this podcast, including my colleague Rich for being on the panel this evening, and Burnley's newest podcaster who's just off camera, but making sure she inputted nonetheless. Thanks to producer Matt for putting all this together, and the rest of the Known and Never panel for their contribution throughout the week of all of ideas and subjects to talk about. We'll be back on Friday with the previous show with Statman Dave, giving you all the information you need ahead of the Clarets' next fixture. And in the meantime, if you've got any comments or suggestions, do drop us a line through the usual social media channels. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the Known and Never podcast. Until next time. The Known and Never podcast is brought to you in association with the TalkSport Fan Network. Our host and editor is Natalie Bromley, and the show is produced by Matt Moss. Our resident statistician is Dave Roberts, and our FPL expert is Adam Dennett. The Analysis Show team is collectively Tom Whittaker, Rich Steele, George Poole, Charlotte Rigby, and Adam Dennett. Our music is provided by George Gaskell, and our newsletter team is headed up by Jamie Smith. If you don't already, you can subscribe to our newsletter by visiting knownandever.substack.com. Thanks as ever go to our partners TalkSport. We are proud to be associated with the TalkSport Fan Network.